Hello and welcome to Leaders with Heart. I'm your host, Paddy McDonald, and today we're diving into a beautiful conversation with Josh Fineman, who is a men's work facilitator over in the UK, who founded this organization called Mensch. And through his own journey with being able to ask for support and lean on the strength and care of his brothers and community, he has lent into this deep path of service of creating this for other men as well. And in this conversation, it's really inspiring to hear how, whilst having achieved a certain level of material success on the outside world, Josh was able to really listen to a deeper sense of fulfillment that was calling him and step away from that to create more service in the world. And what I also love about this conversation is Josh's deep level of vulnerability and authenticity in being able to acknowledge that the journey very much still continues. And even in this conversation, he journeys with the struggles of asking for help and leaning on the support of his community. So I really enjoyed this conversation with Josh and the lessons that I received just by his presence of accepting himself for where he is on the journey, and in doing so, being able to continue to show up in service for those around him. So I'm sure you'll enjoy this conversation. As always, reach out if you have any questions or would like to connect further with either of us. And we look forward to connecting more soon. Much love. Here today with Josh Fineman, men's work facilitator and all-round human striving to make his mark on the world and live his best life. And it's been such a pleasure getting to know Josh virtually over the past few months. And really excited this conversation, man, because I actually don't really know what direction it's going to take. But from our brief interactions, I can tell you're someone that I can really relate to, who is using all the pieces of the puzzle that have been given to you and just seeing the best combination of those to show up in service. So firstly, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Patty. I'm blushing. I feel like I'm just a man trying the best with the tools that he has, as everyone is.
Yeah, 100%.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. And so we started our little chat before this, just dropping in and connecting and tuning into where, what's alive at the moment. And you mentioned there's been some stuff actually really present for you at the moment in respect to leadership of your own organization and things like that. Perhaps you could start by just sharing about your organization, about what it is you do, and then if it feels in flow, just letting us know what's going on for you at the moment.
Yeah, sure. So I run a community called Mensch. I come from a Jewish heritage, and Mensch is a Yiddish word which was bandied around in my household for years. And really, when someone says you're a mensch, that means you're a good person, but the actual definition of it is that you're a person of integrity. And I think when it comes to the work that I do and men's work generally, is it's about being a person of integrity. Are you leading a life that feels honest and authentic to yourself and the person you want to be? And really what Mensch is it's a community and organization for men who want to create positive change in their lives and world. And we help them do that by cultivating courage and community. So really getting men to move into action by knowing that there are people that have really got their backs and supporting them, and they know that they're doing it even if they're scared to do it because it feels like it's the right thing to do.
Amazing. And why did this feel like your piece to bring forward? Like what got you into this?
Yeah. I mean, I think when we first spoke, I said, like, I feel like I've been a deep feeler and deep thinker since I was a little child. And I think there was a moment growing up where I shifted, as many people do, from excitement and possibility and creativity into really a place of fear of not fitting in and self-judgment and competing, and underneath all of that there was just a kid who wanted to get on and share his toys with everyone. And I grew up in a really loving household, but it was also one where, through no fault of my family or my parents, but I grew up in a household where my dad worked a lot and was very successful doing what he did. And I grew up in a community where I think the role of a man really was to go out and earn a ton of money and support his family and the people around him by kind of proving he was the best and can support them through financial means. And that's not the only thing, but that's what I kind of saw as being, well, that's the blueprint laid in front of me. And I think I grew up being terrified of the idea that that's what I had to do. And so when I went out into the working world, in my early 20s, I very much had one foot on the accelerator and one foot on the brake. So I really wanted to go out and prove myself and prove I could achieve what was achieved before me, but one foot on the brake, which is I was absolutely terrified of what would happen if I failed. I really struggled. I really struggled in my early 20s to early 30s, and I've been with my wife and life partner since I was 18, and she kind of became more like my therapist for a large period of that. That wasn't healthy for our dynamic, and I created a dynamic with my parents, particularly my dad, where I would either be really angry at him for not giving me the tools so that I could figure out how to make life and work for me. So I'd rebel against his advice, or I'd crumble under the pressure of what was going on, and I'd run to him, and I'd act like a child who just needs his dad to save him. And whilst all of this was going on, I portrayed a very colourful, happy, funny, life of the party character to most of the people around me. And so I had a mask I was wearing. And, there are a number of other things involved in that conversation, but it basically got to a point where I was coming home many, many days with a glazed look in my eyes, and it had created a bit of a disconnection with my wife. And we just had our first son, and my mum got in a terrible car crash, and she broke every bone in her body. She was in hospital for 3 or 4 months recovering. Thank God she's okay now, 7 years later. But that was a real, my first proper experience of death. My grandparents had died before, but my first experience of you can leave this earth like that. And what was interesting is 2 weeks later, my mum was still in hospital. She was still in intensive care, and I think I went back to work for the first time. And I came back from work, and the first stuff that came out of my mouth was to do with my challenges with my business partner, and that glazed look in my eyes that had been there for so many years prior 2 weeks into this experience with my mum and the context that that can give somebody, my brain was still focused on this need to prove, and with these challenges and obsessions with I have to make this work or I'll be a failure. And my wife looked at me and she said, "You got to see someone about this."
It's just for context there, Josh. So what I'm piecing together is that on the outside, you're killing it. Like, people by society standards would have looked at what was going on from a number of different angles and said, "This guy's got it going on. He's got a business going on that he's leading. He's the life of the party. He's got a family. It's all these things externally that we measure success by were ticked." And there was a deep sense of unfulfillment that had a hold of you. Is that a fair summation?
Yeah, it is. And it's really interesting that even when you say to me from the outside you were killing it, there's this part of me which says, like, yeah, but I wasn't really, and
Yeah,
I'm not even sure if people would see it that way, even if people did see it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so interesting that I've done a lot of work with that voice, but that voice is alive in me still today. It's still a journey and a process of learning how to be with that. But that was there, and
me too as well. And the reason I call it out is because it's something that it becomes clear with an example like you that mental health is something that is available for us all to journey with, no matter the circumstances. And so I love that you tell the story so vulnerably and really in a way that takes all that stuff off the table and just comes back to the fact you're a human dealing with the challenges of life.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, and I wasn't like 24/7 miserable, and I still had so much in my life and moments in my life where I felt aliveness. But there was this melancholic, like, base level that sat underneath so much of the the highs that I experienced across that time. And so when my wife said to me, "You really got to see someone," I didn't really know where to look. I was like, in my head, therapy was still quite. I remember thinking, like, well, I know I've got my challenges, but they're not that bad. Because I didn't really understand the context of therapy. And I think I was looking for a way to progress forward. So I thought, well, maybe a life coach makes sense. And so I just looked in a directory and happened to find someone who lived quite close to me. And she ended up being my coach for about 18 months or so from that moment on. And she was really I'd read a few self-help books and, like I downloaded Headspace. So I thought that I was like, I could meditate. But she was really the first person who got me really thinking about who I am. What are my values? What is it that's important to me? And how am I living those things in my life right now? And where's the resistance? And where is there resistance in my life? And I started being much more conscious in terms of making decisions for me as opposed to making decisions out of a fear of what others would think. And again, I say all of this, I don't even know if that would have been noticeable from those around me, but I knew that was a big deal for me. And that was a journey of a couple of years. And across that time, one of the most significant things that happened is that my wife and I took 2 months out of our working lives to take our 2-year-old. He was 2 years old at the time. We took him traveling. We actually came to Australia for five or 6 weeks, and we did Japan and Bali, and it was absolutely amazing. And then we came home, and I think because we'd made such like a drastic, for us, it was quite a big deal. I remember my coach saying when we started dreaming this idea up, that we'd go traveling, she really pushed me to go for a length of time that felt scary, because we'd whittled it down from a number of months to like, well, let's go for 3 weeks and just have a really lovely holiday. And she was like, no, you need to go for a period of time that scares you. So we ended up going for 2 months.
Like a full reset.
Yeah, full reset. And we came home, and I suppose like looking back, it's all retrospective, but that was a reset, because we came home and we were living close to London in an apartment, and my wife was pregnant with our second child, and without hesitation we looked at each other and we were like, let's move out, let's leave urban life, and let's live now more of a life closer to nature. And just a few other big things happen. And then, as happens a lot of the time, as I'm now a coach myself, sometimes relationships just come to a natural close, and my relationship came to a natural close with that coach. I appreciate this is a very long-winded answer to your original question, but
it was a great insight.
Yeah, but I still I was then introduced to someone who's now still is my mentor and one of my spiritual guides, a man called Kenny Mamarella de Cruz, who ran an organization called Mensch. And we met and just hit it off. And he was a men's coach. He was quoted by a newspaper in the UK as being the man whisperer. And like, it really made me cringe when I met him. I kind of didn't believe. I had this like skeptical doubt of who he was. And I remember he said, why don't you come to a men's group? And I was like, what the fuck is a men's group? Like, that sounds like so archaic. And like, we live in a world now where like, are you even allowed to have a men's group? But being quite open and curious, and because he was such a lovely guy, I was like, yeah, I'll come down, I'll check it out. So I remember going to my first group, and it was I describe it as like a real motley crew. It was just like, 6 or 7 guys in this room, all different ages, different backgrounds, different everything. And it was 2.5 hours or 3 hours, and it was this it was just like this like unbelievably profound experience where I was like, wow, this is like, I'm allowed to really strip everything away and just share myself, and hear other men who are willing to do the same thing. And this isn't just having a deep chat with my mates, or opening up to this is like really going layers deeper than where I would normally go with conversations around money, sex, purpose, like, you name it. And I was hooked. And then Kenny started coaching me, and I kept going to groups. And then very quickly, what unfolded from there is, I don't want to run an advertising agency for, like, this isn't what I'm meant to be doing here.
The business that you put all this energy into building, and
my baby,
external metric of success.
It was like, and that voice had been there for a couple of years, but I started listening to it after coming to these groups, and because I think that whole experience completely elevated the foundations that I'd created with my first coach. And And literally the week or 2 weeks before COVID and lockdown, I told my business partner, like, I need to step away from the business. And then COVID happened, and actually, like, it was almost the perfect gift, because it accelerated what may have taken much longer to unravel and leave in a clean way. And then, like, from May 2020, I was just like, right, what do I want to do with my life? And I just knew there was this breadcrumb of I love being in spaces with people who are willing to open up. And when I look back on my career and my life generally, the things I loved the most in my work was when people opened up to me about stuff that was going on for them personally, or I orchestrated events or masterminds or workshops, things that were about enabling people to share their challenges with each other. And then over lockdown, everything went online, and Kenny needed people to help him with the influx of men who needed daily support. And so he trained me and a number of other guys up in basically how to do what he does. And then I learned through doing, and I spent 3 years every week, like, holding these groups for men who were everything from, lost in search of purpose, to suicidal, to going through a breakup, to curious about what this was all about, to like challenges with money, to like, well, whatever it was just like like holding the conversation. And I loved it. And I did a bunch of other things over that period of time that was all around a similar thing. But the consistent thread was the men's work. And then a bunch of other stuff happened in that time. But a couple of years ago now, which was a few years into that, no, a couple of years ago. How long ago is it? 4 years ago. It's probably like 18 months ago into that whole thing. I felt like now's the time to try and do my own version of this. And so I started a group, and I called it Mensch. And then one group became two became three became four, and then four became three, and then three became two, and then two became five, and it like expanded and contracted, and then it's just become what it's become now, which is this like really rich, evolving community of guys who I'm on a journey with.
So just for the sake of, I love that, man. It's really beautiful to see your story of the way that you've peeled back the layers to really be able to hear that voice that was coming out, and then let the parts of your life that weren't aligned fall away. And beautiful that the parts of your life that were aligned, like your family, for example, like, was solid throughout that as well. So, because I think when I hear this story, what comes up is that fear of like, oh no, if I go on this path of listening to my inner voice, am I going to lose my business that I've spent all this time and energy bringing in? And what I'm hearing in your share is that, like, only if there's something better for me. Like, the only reason I'll lose something from my life is if something even better is coming. And like, so I'd love for you if you just would share around, what does it look like now? What does Mensch look like, and what does that mean to you from a day-to-day fulfillment point of view?
It's just such a beautifully timed question, because the truth is that the first 6 to 9 months of Mensch was just this wild experiment. Oh, can you hear me? Okay, cool. And then it got to a point where I entered a moment of, okay, how do I monetize this? how does this business scale? What value do I need to provide in order to make this something of quote unquote significance? And I very quickly burnt myself out by moving it away from being a essentially creative expression into a commercial product. And I realized very soon into that the way I was going about that was totally unsustainable, because A, I was doing it all on my own. B, I was putting so much pressure on myself for it to need to become something. And C, I'd been down that road before and I'd burnt myself out, and that was a cycle that I was trying to break, and the reason I got into this work in the first place. And the truth is, Mensch has never really been a money maker, and at some point it will generate me some sort of income, whether directly or income that is of significance, however you measure that. But what I am allowing it to be right now still is just a big playpen. Like, I keep coming back and remembering that someone said to me a couple of years ago that, like, Josh, the reason why we come to Mensch is not because you're a guru or because you're going to fix us. It's because we're all lost in the jungle. And you just happen to be the guy who said, I'll take the machete and I'll hack away at the jungle to clear the path for you guys. And it's so important for me to come back to that, because it allows me to be able to say, you know what, like, I know this is how it's been going so far, but I think there's a better way of serving these guys. Like, I want to try something new out. I want to do this differently. So, like, I don't know where it's going, but I know that, on the face of it, Mensch was just online groups where you met up every couple of weeks with 5 or 6 guys. And now there are retreats, and there are community activities, and there's cold swimming, and there are 7 WhatsApp groups, and there's, I don't know, however many people who have been part of the process. But I do love the idea that I actually don't know where it's going. But there are some core ingredients that are being built into it as, like, I experiment with it. And, to your point about what I feel I am doing, and it's really nice to say, because it's difficult to reflect on that consistently, is like, I'm integrate at the moment. I feel like I'm just integrating all parts of me into my life, and Mensch is an opportunity to express that. So, like, my Jewish heritage, like, I took that for granted for a long time, and I'm now learning a lot about Jewish spirituality and Jewish wisdom, and I'm noticing how much of that aligns with what I'm already doing with Mensch. So I want to find out ways to infuse that in. Now, it doesn't mean that Mensch is only for Jewish men, but I love the idea of bringing my heritage and honoring that and bringing that into the Mensch experience. At one point, Mensch needed to be the thing that made me my money and supported my family. And right now at this stage, actually, it doesn't, because I've started a new venture with my dad, which I would never have been able to do 5 or 6 years ago. But I'm realizing I have a gift and an opportunity with him, and why wouldn't I pursue that to satisfy that side of it, to enable Mensch to be whatever I want it to be right now as well.
Can I just pause on that, bro? Because I hear something potentially, like, really profound in the way the dots are connecting here, which is that you said that 5 or 6 years ago you wouldn't have been able to entertain the idea of
going into business with your dad, stuff there. And correct me if I'm wrong, but my presumption would be that that's because there might have been some inner stuff going on for you that would have blocked you from stepping.
Yeah.
And so therefore the reason that you're able to step into this business that's going to financially support you and help this other enterprise keep going is because you've done the inner work.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
You've done the inner what you're doing with Mensch.
Yeah.
And so it's like the two are feeding each other, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
So it is, Mensch is actually paying for itself in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if this quite this may be important for your audience to hear or not, but like I've through my journey, what I've realized is that especially when it came to my career, because career was such a big part of my dad's life and what being a man was for me when I was living a less conscious life, I suppose. I was desperately trying to find a career that paid me good money, that I was really good at, and that I was deeply passionate about, and was making an impact on the world. Because I had this part of me that, as I said, from 4 or 5 was a deep feeler and deep thinker and wanted to create more. But I was in a world where I wanted all the other bits as well. And I actually think like I live in a culture right now where like I am being like hammered with that messaging of like, you need to find the career that is purposeful and ikigai and like all of this stuff around like find the sweet spot of what you're good at, what you're passionate about, what the world needs and how it's going to pay and all of that stuff. And this is just for me, but like what I'm realizing is like all the elements of that are so important, like really important. You find something that you're passionate about. Really important. You do something and master something that plays to your strengths. Really important. You take responsibility in the physical world we live in to do something that pays you the money to sustain the life that you really want, whatever that means. And really important, you do something that gives back to society. But like, I think it's a real dangerous mistake to try and find the one thing that does all of that. And so what this work has given me an opportunity to see now is like, holy shit, the reason I was miserable those years ago is because I wasn't doing anything that I felt passionately about or was giving back. Really, I was just trying to have a career that paid me money and trying to within it do something that felt impactful. And then I went the complete other way and I was like, fuck that, I need to do something that I'm passionate about and that's giving back. And now I've got that. It's like, oh, I can actually have all those pieces and live a really good life and a fulfilled one that is meaningful. And I just think I was caught in the trap of needing it all to be perfect and all under one roof for so long.
Definitely relate to that. So definitely a pattern I see in the world as well as in myself. So thank you for sharing that, man. And I'd love to hear about meeting this need of sharing your legacy with the world. And you mentioned that there's some new ways this is coming through for you now. Is there anything you'd like to share on how you're playing your role in leading in this way?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like basically just this week, I think I can have a danger as a leader of a community and generally as someone who I sit quite comfortably in positions of leadership. But I think sometimes there's a danger to that, which is that I forget myself in that, and I think I need to be someone for people. And I appreciate the complexities of being a leader in a functionally commercial business. Like, I ran an agency, I've been in corporate, but like, I understand that. And I think ideally, I hope my lessons can apply to the normal business world, because what I'm realizing within my community is, well, it goes back to that that framing that someone said to me a couple of years ago about within Mensch, of like, I'm the guy with the machete at the front. That's why they're in Mensch, not because I'm the guru leader. And just this week, I was having a real wobble. I was like, my nervous system was like charged, and I was really in a place of fear and feeling quite lonely. And I wasn't willing to share it with my community in Mensch. And I think that was because there's a part of me that has created and wants to create space outside of it to support me with that, so that I can be able to listen more to them and serve the men more within my community. But I think the danger of that is sometimes I forget that like me modeling what it means to be willing and committed to sharing my full self will it inspire these men to do the same. And so it's really interesting that the way of being a leader and the legacy, I suppose, I'm wanting to leave behind to my community, but also like to my kids and the people around me, is like, it's okay. It's okay to be wherever you're at. And I need to take that medicine for myself sometimes, because I think sometimes I don't, and I worry that if I'm not the guy who's got it all figured out and knows the answer and is this grounded Zen-like guru who, you know, just everything is bliss and I'm grateful for everything, and you know, I shouldn't feel fear and I shouldn't feel these things, sadness or anger or jealousy or shame, or I can get caught in a loop of when I feel that way, of being angry at myself that I feel those things because I've done so much work and I shouldn't be like this. And if I'm leading my community, then how can I possibly lead them if I still feel these things myself? I think a really healthy reminder and credit to the guys within my community for reminding me that like they don't want a leader like that. They don't want they want someone who gets what they're going through and is willing to share their shit as well. And like, man, that is like, I can't tell you, yesterday I was running one of my groups, and two of the guys, in spite of some inner awkwardness of not wanting to take space myself, like really gave me the space and really reminded me of that. And like the medicine of like, wow, like it's okay to ask for help, you know, and the irony that sometimes I even struggle with that myself. It's just the greatest gift in the world to have that. And I suppose that's the legacy that I want to leave. Is it's okay.
How do you do it?
How do I do it?
How do you do that as a leader? Yeah, like, I mean, there's the obvious way of just like saying I need help, but like when someone's kind of going through the realities of just that being feeling not like it's not an option, like what would you say to a leader in that position?
I mean, I think like there are a couple of things for me that is really powerful to hear when I'm in that position. The first and obvious thing is just like someone who says, just tell me more. Like, just tell me more. Just get it all out. Tell me more. And is really like being with someone who's really able to hear. If you're before that stage though, and you just don't even know who to ask, it's really difficult. I don't know if I even have advice for that. I think the advice is as simple as, can you even just, as hard as it is to ask for help, like, can you reach out to somebody and just share? There has to be a leap of faith. I just think there has to be. But I think for me, it's about, can you do that with someone that is a good listener? You know, sometimes I actually like opening up to my wife isn't the best person to open up to, because she's coming into something with her own challenges, and we got 3 kids and she's got her own life, and it's like, it might be another thing to add to her plate. So I can't have an expectation that she's the right person to ask for help from. So I think it's about, is there someone in your life? And the other thing as well, I think that's really helpful, actually.
The lesson
Sorry.
Just going to say, the lesson I'm witnessing from your share as well is around, like, set up these structures when the going is a little easier, and like when it's feeling like maybe you don't need help, like put these people in your life and invest in those relationships so that it's just easy to lean on them when we all inevitably need that help.
I love that. Thank you for your help there. And I agree. I totally agree. And it's lovely that you brought that up, because I'll say something and then I'll come back to that. But I think something that really helps people when they're stuck and they don't want to ask for help is to say, if your friend came to you in your position and they shared with you what you want to share with them, but you're scared of sharing it with them, how would you feel? And would you want to help? And, most people have someone that, even if they're afraid of asking for help from them, they would be more than willing to help them if the shoe was on the other foot. And I think that context is really important. And then I love what you said, because actually one of the big things within Mensch is, one of the things that we practice is commitment. There are a number of different ways that you can get involved, but when you're involved in something called a Mensch pack, which is essentially your group of 6 to 8 guys that you meet up with every 2 weeks, either like online or in person, we essentially set principles and guidelines for the expectations of each other, and one of them is that we're going to be here for every 6 sessions. You're expected to be here for 5 of them. Your intention is to be here for 5 of them. Ideally, you're here for all of them, but your intention is to be here for 5 of them. And the reason for that is because we're here to show up for each other, not just for ourselves. Because sometimes you're going to be feeling fucking great. Life's going to be amazing. There's nothing you need to ask for help for. But you're showing up to show up for others, not just for yourself. Because then when it does come to the time where you need help, like, there's all the more reason why these guys are going to show up for you, because you've shown up for them, and because you're doing it week in, week out with each other. And I think that's one of the really special things within my community and many communities like this is, to your point of building those relationships up where you show up for each other, so that when the shit hits the fan, you're right, it becomes a bit easier. But I would say even if you're not interested in this work, even if you're not interested in building new relationships up, and if you're stuck in a situation right now where you're going through something and you need to ask for help and you don't know how to, I just think it's so important to remember, if you put the shoe on the other foot, what would you do? And that can just help with that fear that bubbles up. And then it is a leap of faith, and it is going to be scary, but I bet a lot of money that it won't turn out as scary as your mind is telling you it might do.
Fully agree. Yeah, I feel like it points to this fact that we all innately enjoy giving, and like I'm surrounded by people who love to give, and I've had this realization over and over again that sometimes the best way I can give to them is to receive from them and let them play the role of giving. Because there's been times when I've just been so fixated with, I want to be the giver, I want to be the one who's seen to be like always giving, and then like no one else is getting the chance to have that beautiful feeling that I'm getting from giving. So it's actually doing a disservice.
100%.
So there's such a beauty in letting go of that, and just like, we're all human. We all need each other.
I love that, man. And also, you know, something, again, it harks back to what I keep being reminded of leading within Mensch, is that you asking for help of other people gives them permission to ask for help from you. You are giving by taking, you know, because you're giving these people permission to be like, oh, it's actually okay to ask for help.
Beautiful, brother. So just to kind of close the loop on your story especially, I'd love to hear how you're feeling in the big picture now, zooming out of the challenges of and looking at your life and the changes that have happened since those days of coming home with the glazed look in your eye. And I'm certainly not seeing that in this conversation. So can you just reflect on the joy that stepping into this path has given you, or just any other way you'd like to share that your life has changed from following this path?
Wow. Yeah, I want to answer this by just thinking, if Josh from 2019, 2018 met Josh today, like, what would he say? Or like, what would that make him feel? And I suppose what that helps me recognize is a few things. Firstly, like, what I wanted was right in front of me the whole time. It's like I went out on this quest in search of something, and I just, it was right there. It was like, run a business venture with your dad to sort out your shit with each other, and to take care and responsibility for your family, and do this thing that you're really passionate about, that you've fallen into and you love, and take the pressure off that needs to be any more than what it is, because what it is significant enough. And my point of, you don't need everything to be figured out in this one, like, there's not one way to figure out your problems. There are multiple things that you can do.
It's almost like you've got a community of solutions, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. I also think there's something in oh God, sounds so cliche, but I'm still a guy on a journey. Like, I've still got my stuff, and that will be there in different situations for a long time, forever, really, right? I'm always going to be on the journey. So it's not like I'm fixed, and that's okay. And the other thing is, I say it to myself, right, when I journal things. I do this thing in a morning journal where I will kind of listen to what's going on in my head. I'll kind of do this thing where I'll listen to the critical voices and the stuff that's going off, and then I'll process it, and then I'll ask myself, if I could hear anything right now, what is it I'd really want to hear? And two things that just come up consistently are like, just be yourself today. And the other is, you can fucking do it. And I think that I have grown hugely in owning those two sentences in the last 6 years of my life. Feels nice to say. Thank you for giving me that space.
Is there anything else you want? Yeah, wow. Yeah, it's amazing to zoom out sometimes, isn't it? And just actually see the journey that you've been on. And as you said, beautifully, like, the journey continues, and it would be boring if it didn't. But it's very much this thing of when we look in the mirror every day, we don't see much change, but when we actually see what has happened, it's a lot. Is there anything else you want to share with people listening today? The other pieces that feel alive for me?
I'm not sure. I actually, I don't think there is. I think there's just I don't think there is, actually. I think I've shared my lessons for myself today, and hope that resonates for some of the people who listen. So thanks for having me. Really, really appreciate being on the show.
I'll just share in reflection what I love about the answer of there isn't anything else. It speaks to a theme that's been for me lately of contentment and self-acceptance that I hear, and I feel you've really given the transmission of today in your journey of bringing out the imperfection and really like letting it be a part of the story, but in a way that's like just, it's not even celebrating it. Celebrating it would be like kind of overinflating it. It's actually just letting it be what it is. And I really love feeling that, man. And it feels like real important medicine for me, and for no doubt many other people experiencing this as well. So thank you for that, and for all your other gifts you bring into the world, and all the ways you are, your community. And it's a real pleasure to get to know you.
Thank you, man. Thanks, Patty. Loved it.
Awesome. And if people want to connect further, what's the best way to reach out to you?
Well, good point, because I am terrible on social media, although I've now just started working with someone who's getting some Mensch stuff up on Instagram soon, but I can't point you there. All I would, if you want to get in touch with me, then visit the Mensch website, www.bemoremensch.com. Mensch is MENSCH. Or I'm on LinkedIn for my sins.
We'll put all these links in there.
Yeah, put some links in. And if anything around like Mensch sounds of interest, there's loads of stuff just to try that is, free, and it's just about having a taste of this stuff. So any questions or anything, like, please just reach out. And if you're not in the UK and you want something more local, but you want to just find out more about menswear, like, I'm always happy just to have a chat with people and answer any questions they have. So yeah, I'm at the end of an email, and we'll get back to you for sure.
So much, brother. And for people in Melbourne and Australia, I definitely can point you in some directions as well for men's work over here. But it's the great thing about the virtual world these days, eh? We can connect all over the globe. So thanks again, brother. It's been a pleasure. And to everyone else, thanks for listening, and we'll speak soon.
Thanks for being with us on Leaders with Heart today. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. And if you want to continue the conversation with either myself or the guest, you can reach us via the links in the show notes. We love hearing from you. I also love getting connected to new people who are doing amazing things in this space. So if you have any suggestions for future interviews, you can reach out to me as well. Also, if you'd like any support, whether that be individually through leadership coaching or whether that be for your company in developing leadership solutions, I am absolutely here to help. So you can connect with me and we can have a no obligation conversation. Until next time, have a beautiful week and keep leading with love. Take care.